when we were off before we were recording, we kind of touched on plant medicine, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that in some way, plant medicine has been able to release a lot of tension in my spirit
Mm-hmm.
in order to allow me to feel connection. Um,
Yeah.
this farm has been pretty magical in that way
I can
because
imagine. Yes.
when you are
Yeah.
present of mind in nature and when you are nurturing a piece of Mother Earth,
Yeah.
you have to do it with a real deep sense of empathy and love. And
Yeah.
if those words are offensive to especially men, you're not there, and you're going to be missing out on something magical in your life, because
Yeah.
there's nothing emasculating about saying words like compassion and love and
Yeah.
joy and connection to nature and fulfilling a spiritual journey and reconnecting with God and with the source and with your own spirit. These are, I think these are the things that make a man step into his masculinity in the proper way.
Yes, agreed. And in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, but I feel like the increase of mental health problems too within like a lot of people, even within our kids now, is the disconnect.
Yeah.
Is the disconnect from source, from planet Earth. We talk about like all the human atrocities that are happening, like even with the law and whatnot, like when what you witnessed and whatnot and what I witnessed. But now there's the inadvertently hurting our fellow man because of consumerism. Like when
Oh
we
yeah.
buy the Gucci handbag or the Guess labels and whatnot, we don't see what's happening behind the scenes. However, there is a part of us that does know.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
know because the information's out there, but we just choose to look the other way. So
Yep.
we inadvertently are hurting our fellow man in order to have material gain. And I think that people are starting to like it's all starting to kind of bubble up into their consciousness.
It, for a lot of people, there's sort of like a voodoo kind of barrier that they can't climb over.
Mm,
They think that if they step into the spiritual realm, that they have to start burning patchouli incense
mm, mm,
and doing seances and practicing Wicca, and that's not
yeah,
true. Spirituality is an individual thing,
yeah.
and spirituality is connecting to something greater than you, because as it appears in shamanism and in quantum
Mm-hmm,
dynamics and physics, there is
mm-hmm,
something greater. There is something about what we are that is just well beyond what we can really comprehend. Like
right.
matter, for example. Matter doesn't exist. Matter is just an illusion. The fact that things are solid is simply an illusion because of the laws of physics. There
Right.
is no such thing as solid ever anywhere in the entire universe. Everything's just energy.
Yes,
And if
exactly.
and people can't comprehend that, it scares them. It really is frightening for people to grasp spirituality, because they have to release the indoctrination of modern humanity, where we're mostly these materialists.
Mm-hmm.
When you pick up a mug, the porcelain feels solid in your hand. Your conscious mind cannot comprehend that matter doesn't exist, that what you're holding is literally just uh, energy in a specific frequency,
Yeah,
in an electro
exactly.
in an with an electrostatic charge that doesn't
Mm-hmm,
allow your hand, because it has its own specific frequency,
mm-hmm.
and they repel like magnets. That's when we learned about electromagnetism. That's what we discovered. Oh,
Yeah,
why can't I pass through walls? Because the wall's like a North Pole magnet and I'm a South Pole magnet. If you really
right.
wanted to dumb it down, right? It you Spirituality doesn't let you consciously just see the matrix and ones and zeros and green and black lines everywhere.
Yeah.
But it at least gives you a starting point to recognize that the energy, literally energy, is something very, very real that affects you. And what's
Yes.
associated with energy is your mind. You know,
Absolutely.
we don't know what the mind is. We don't know
Hmm.
really what consciousness is. However,
Yeah.
it's powerful enough to change us.
Yes.
born from the desire to never want to be sick again. I
Mhm.
had to find every single avenue possible to pull myself out of this. And I'd always had a desire to learn about reality and consciousness and physics
Mhm.
because I've been reading for a long time. But then it took a real turn where I realized, oh my gosh, this isn't just information. This is literally how we exist.
Yeah.
And then I learned that just like Bruce Lee says, don't ever talk bad about yourself. That
Exactly.
that in itself, and you know this, Ron,
Hmm.
that in itself is a level of energy that will either bring you up or down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the voodoo that people are afraid of, when in reality it
Hmm.
actually can pull you out and give
Yeah.
you a much greater sense of connectedness and a better
Yeah.
wholesome life.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of that now is slowly starting to become mainstream. I mean, if you look at, like, say, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, I
Yeah,
mean, their books, like, not even what, maybe 10 years ago, they were all in the occult section.
I know. And now they're in
Yeah.
lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Now they're in
It's
human health.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got Joe Dispenza's book right here.
I just love it. Oh yeah, becoming
Yeah,
supernatural. Yeah,
yeah,
I read You Are the Placebo. And the thing is, like, revolutionary developments in many disciplines are rapidly closing the gap between science and spirituality. And now they
absolutely.
have very sophisticated instrumentation where they can read the energy, not even just from our bodies like us, even though they can watch microscopic, they can watch our brain, like the
Yep,
neurology. Now the nerve cells can grow
yep,
when a brain is learning, but they can actually read the energy of a room.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
incredible.
bizarre. And I actually wanted to share a story with you too, which I saw on the Three Amigos, which is Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, I've
And
been following those guys for a while. I like them.
oh, they're amazing. And they
Yep,
were they were talking about a young lady that got a heart transplant. She was the recipient,
yep,
and she kept getting these nightmares, like really vivid nightmares of being murdered. And she told her surgeon about these dreams, about these nightmares. And he's like, "Oh, it might be the medication. You've been under a lot of stress or whatever." But they kept happening over and over and over. So they finally asked, "Where did this heart come from?" And it turned out it was actually a murder victim.
my gosh.
And the dreams were so vivid that she was actually able to solve the murder.
So I think I had heard that story, not as in detail, but sort of
Mhm.
in passing. Yeah, it's incredible,
Yeah,
Rhonda.
it is
People
so incredible.
people don't realize that your heart has neurons.
Yeah. Yes.
Your heart has over 400,000 neurons in a small center. Your heart actually feels.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
in this strange way, here we go talking about it again. Neurons are sort of the biological energy packets that emotion and feelings emerge from.
Hmm.
And that's one of the mysteries, because
Hmm.
all that scientists can see during fMRI and PET scan and all of the other really amazing sort of
Hmm.
imaging that they can do, all they get to see is electricity firing, and,
Right.
and the center where the electricity is firing. And we know that if you
Hmm.
lose that center, you can lose a part of you. However, you can't see anywhere where the consciousness resides, or color, or
Yeah.
taste. And no matter if you're using your eyes, your tongue, your fingers, or your ears, or your
Hmm.
nose, it's the same electrical pulse. It's just a pulse of electricity with electrons traveling to a neuron that is
Yeah.
connected to thousands and thousands and thousands of other neurons,
Hmm.
that is providing an experience of our perception of reality. And that's the
Hmm.
mystery. And well, how do you explain that except going out on a leap of faith and understanding that there is some kind of overarching intelligence within the universe, within the cosmos, that we just don't
Yeah.
understand yet, but that is the driving force as to why we have love
Hmm.
and sorrow, why we experience taste and color, because these things don't really exist in the universe. You can't get a mathematical equation for the taste of a strawberry, um, or the
Yeah.
color the color blue. Those things
Yeah.
are those things are just perceptions within our mind, within
Hmm.
the four-dimensional space that we create in our mind.
Yeah.
And when you kind of open up Pandora's box on spirituality, you realize,
Yeah, please do.
yeah, well, you realize
Mhm.
that we're being duped because it's the
Mhm.
only way that we can perceive reality
Mhm.
in human form. And I know that that sounds insane, but it's just
Mhm.
true. That's all we are. You know, Nikola Tesla, over, I think it was like 120 years ago, one of the
Mhm.
most famous, probably one of the most brilliant scientists of all time, said, if you want to understand the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yes.
Because he
Mhm.
knew that what he was looking at was not solid matter. It wasn't the
Mhm.
little ping pong balls slapping together and making all
Yeah.
that there is. It was some strange mix of energies that were coming together in sort of this beautiful magical soup that creates all that we have.
Yes. Yeah.
And that freaks people out big time.
Yeah. And one thing that came to mind too when you were talking about that is quantum entanglement. And you look at even I think it was Carl Jung. He talked about he kind of coined like coincidence, synchronicities.
Synchronicities, yeah, and
Yeah, like
serendipities, yeah.
yeah, like how does that actually happen? You know what I mean? That all of a sudden you're focused on something and then go out into the world and it happens. And that's exactly what you were thinking about.
Yeah. Quantum entanglement is something that I can't really explain well because
Hmm.
you need to be like a top physicist to even begin
Yes.
to understand
Yeah.
it. However, in layman's terms, and Einstein knew about quantum entanglement back in the 20s, but he didn't
Hmm.
believe it. He thought that the math was wrong.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, so in the 1920s,
Hmm.
quantum mechanics was developed.
Hmm.
It hasn't changed since the 1920s. That's how we're
Right.
stuck right there. Physicists are stuck in the 1920s. They can't figure
Hmm.
out anything more than what Einstein and Niels Bohr and a couple other
Hmm.
real big prominent physicists knew. And there was something in the math and the geometry that was speaking to entanglement where two particles seemingly have the ability to interact. And this is so layman's term. This is
Hmm.
so way off because it's so much deeper than this. I don't even understand it
Yeah,
myself.
but we need to keep it for our viewers too, right?
Yeah, well,
for
and
me,
so
for me to understand.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
particles always have
Mm-hmm.
sort of their particles all have a couple of characteristics that set them
Mm-hmm.
apart. They have the way that they spin and whether
Mm-hmm.
or not they're like pointing a certain direction. So if two particles interact, and I'm talking particles magnitudes of order smaller than an atom. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
talking the most fundamental of particles down
Right.
at the basement level of quantum mechanics. If they interact, which means they come together somehow, and that's, I don't even know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, if they've interacted, which means they've observed one another or they've come in contact, you can separate them in any distance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do something to one, it seems like the other one knows. And they've proven this now. They can do quantum entanglement experiments here on planet Earth, and they can actually like and this is so layman's term too, but they
Mm-hmm.
can wiggle a particle, and the entangled particle 30 miles away wiggles
Mm-hmm. Does the
instant
exact same thing.
instantaneously,
Yes.
faster than it's instant. It's not the speed of
Yeah.
light, it's instant. And that has just sort of it's kind of blown everything up because,
Mm-hmm.
well, what does that mean? It means
Yeah.
that there's a connection much deeper than we understand, and that the connection is really real.
Yes.
It's not just
Mm-hmm.
weirdo Hinduism and Buddhism. It's actually this real tangible thing that's going on in
Yeah.
the universe.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say tangible, right? Tangible like that, because when you even look at like the spiritual emergencies that people are having, where the veil is very thin. They're starting to see entities and beings and whatever it is. And sometimes it's so jarring that they can't even tell what's reality anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we would coin that as maybe like psychosis. We would medicate them and throw them in a padded room,
Yep.
right? But now they're starting to realize that, this is an emergence.
It could be, you know, like
It
schizophrenia
Mhm.
and the other associated ones where people are seeing this thing. I 100% agree. I think
Mhm.
possible, excuse
Yeah.
me, it's possible that they're just experiencing a level of reality that we can't.
Yeah. And the thing is, I kind of jumped a little bit ahead right now, but I want to kind of go back to what you were saying um, about the energy, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had like an out of body experience, remote viewing?
Mm.
Like, I mean, these things are documented studies that have actually been recorded. So explain that.
I've had some profound experiences
Mm-hmm.
through meditation
Mm-hmm.
um, and meditation while using cannabis, because cannabis seems to, like you said, kind of open the curtains up and it lets you kind of peek at Oz, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll share one that well, I don't care. I don't get embarrassed anymore. I'll share one
Mm-hmm.
that's that was really profound to me. So I don't use cannabis anymore for personal
Mm-hmm.
reasons because of addiction struggles, but
Mm-hmm.
more than probably about a year and a half ago, I was casually using cannabis and I was preparing to do a meditation because at the time it was really helping me connect and allow me to focus, because with a very wild emotional mind, especially because I've had symptoms of ADHD for most of my life, this was allowing me to narrow my focus so I could get deep into a meditation at a much quicker rate.
Mm-hmm.
I got into a space where um, I was observing what appeared to be the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And every it also looked like I was actually peering into the cell of anything and seeing how all the atoms line up. But what set it apart and what made me think that it was the multiverse, and this thing was, I'm telling you, Rhonda, if you've experienced one of these, it was as real as what this is right now. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
as though it was a dream. I know what a dream is. You can wake up and, oh, that was a dream. Cool.
Yeah.
This was like I had stepped into an observation deck and I was watching the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And at while I was watching the multiverse, and I didn't know this at the time because I hadn't learned this in traditional Eastern philosophy, I started hearing the most deep and guttural resonant frequency of the sound Om.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
And and as I was doing that, there was like a celestial being of like energy that looked
Mm-hmm.
like I said because it was a masculine type of
Of
figure.
course, yeah.
It had anthropomorphized in a very vague human form and was sort of um, floating through this multiverse. And the sound Om, which we all know in the spiritual world, is like this connecting frequency that really grounds you and brings you as close as you can to source. That sound was vibrating my body at such a level that it ended up awakening me. But what the sound was and what I got from this thing was it was God breathing life into all of the universes with this sound.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
And I can remember every little tiny detail of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a very incredible, almost terrifying, frightening experience in this meditation. But
Yeah.
it was the sound, and
Yeah.
I can't even recreate it. But it was
Mm-hmm.
just this wildly deep that was, it felt like it was physically vibrating everything in my body, and
Yeah.
it ended up jarring me out of the meditation I was in.
I can
Um,
imagine.
and after that, I thought I'd never experienced that before. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
found out about the Om sound and started using that Om chanting in my own
Mm-hmm.
meditations on
Yeah.
a binaural beat track, I was like, what? I
Yeah.
I learned this in my mind before I ever even had heard, because I hadn't
Yeah.
quite gotten there in my spiritual discovery yet. I don't know what to make of it other than I'm going to keep following that because it's
Yeah.
got to mean something.
Yeah. I practice that not regularly, like I should be. I
Yep.
shouldn't. I'm not going to shit on myself, but I would like to deepen my practice.
Yep.
Where you go through like the chakras, where each one of them, like the Om is your, your higher chakra, and then there's Lam, Ram, like it goes
Yep.
down. Have you tried that one?
Well, I've used a lot of binaural beats and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guided meditations that get you
Yeah.
like take you through the various sounds and the various chantings. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole
Yeah.
lot about it because I'm
Yeah.
new to it and I'm still learning.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to the conversation about the energy particles that can simultaneously do the same thing when the other one reacts, do you think that kind of speaks for like what you just said too, like with the energy in our bodies, how we can kind of almost like trans teleport, remote view? Do you think that that energy just travels?
It is entirely possible. It also could mean that there is an infinite amount of duplicate use,
Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So if the universe is infinite in its size,
Mm-hmm.
that means that there is an infinite version, and you can't even fathom this. There's
Mm-hmm.
an infinite version of Rhondas. There's an infinite version of Earths. Infinity is so vast. You can't even describe it as vast. Infinity is beyond what we can comprehend. But
Mm-hmm.
if the universe is eternal, and it's sort of like this flat mat of energy systems that are at a fundamental level, all sort of working in concert, and
Mm-hmm.
distance doesn't matter because distance is a comprehension that really doesn't mean anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Kind of like time too. It's a construct.
Well, I don't know if it is. There's some pretty
Yeah.
big thinkers out there that are thinking that time might be fundamental. And I can go there with my
Yeah.
own sort of idea on it if you want, but
Yeah, me too. I agree actually.
and I don't know. I'm an amateur.
Mhm.
I follow a lot of physics lectures only to try
Mhm.
and dissect a general philosophy of understanding. But yeah, if quantum entanglement is real. So
Mhm.
that means every single particle in your body is entangled with another one, and who knows where it is. And so,
Mm.
astral projections and out of body experiences and
Yes.
deja vu and serendipities,
Yeah.
perhaps it's because somewhere else things are happening and it's kind of wiggling something in you that is giving you the experience remote
Mm.
at a distance, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. That kind of loops right back to what we were talking about now
Yeah.
with like the particles being separated and simultaneously doing the same thing because you're right. Maybe we're connecting with that other body, that other Rhonda, that other Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really I like that.
Well, and so physics is getting to a point where they're gonna have to drop the atheistic shtick and start
Mhm.
to return to philosophy to come together and try and recognize what really it is that's going on. Because it
Yeah.
now that these things are being proven and we're at a point where they don't know what else to do, like
Mhm.
the answer has to be out there,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Um, but I think it's going to require that all of these really big brain people out there kind of go out on a limb and throw away
Yeah.
this ancient nihilistic idea that we're all just moving billiard balls smacking together and we're creating consciousness and entanglement because it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
That just fell apart when they proved entanglement. You know, the house of cards built on the sand just sort of fell down, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
they're gonna have to rebuild their ideas of what's real, what's really real, what is
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.